Charlemagne, one of the few greats who actually earned the title, Charles the Great, at stat rolling that is. This guy is what you get when you decide to use cheat codes in a CK3 game, and select all the positive traits. Conqueror who spent half of his life campaigning? Check. Devout Christian who set the bar for what warrior king should be? Check. A 46-year, uninterrupted reign, and only a single son alive to inherit? Check. They don't call old Charles here the founder of Europe for nothing. He took the solid foundations built by Charles Martel and Pepin to create the first empire since the fall of Rome. Well, at least in the West, because back east, the Byzantines were still kicking it. Unfortunately for them, their roles were not nearly as good. Ever since Justinian, the Eastern Romans just couldn't catch a break. The rise of Islam even nearly caused the fall of Constantinople itself in 717. But after dodging that bullet, they really picked themselves up. And, started civil wars over the value of icons. Constantine V managed to restore some semblance of stability, but his successor Leo IV succumbed just 5 years into his reign. Enter Irene of Athens. Upon the death of her husband in 780, Irene became Empress Regent for their 9-year-old son, Constantine VI. She stacked the council with capable eunuchs loyal to her, and convincingly took the reins. She reclaimed mainland Greece, restored Byzantine trade, created numerous cultural epicenters, all despite a fierce opposition to her decrees. That being said, she also did blind her own son, in the same room he was born in. Eek. In any case, she was a capable ruler, and after that bloody affair, her 5-year solo reign coincided with the coronation of Charlemagne as the first Holy Roman Emperor. Which brings us to a very interesting question. What if Charlemagne decided to marry Irene, and unite the East and... Oh wait, he actually did? Wow. Wait, this can't be right. He proposed after he was crowned by the Pope? So, what if Irene was willing to accept Charlemagne's marriage proposal? She wanted to do it, but her advisors were against it. Well, that is the same year they overthrew her, and Byzantines were notoriously opposed against Westerners, especially Franks. Okay, that makes sense, but what about all these videos? What about this video? Oh well, so much for this idea. Thanks for watching, everyone. This is Cody of Alternate History, or maybe... just maybe. While most would look to match up these two incredibly interesting rulers around the year 800, if one does a deep dive, like I did, you will quickly find out that there is an incredibly wasted opportunity a few years earlier. After Charlemagne had conquered the Kingdom of Lombardy, the Frankish influence began overlapping with that of the Byzantines, who still had considerable assets in Italy. To pacify a potential threat, Irene proposed a betrothal in 782. Charlemagne's daughter Rotrud, 7 at the time, was to marry Constantine VI, tying the two dynasties together. The match was confirmed, and instantly the anti-Byzantine attitudes in the West began to dissipate. In the following 5 years, both sides were busy reigning over vast realms with many rebels, and prevented the onslaught of Abbasid and Saxon invaders. And then, in 787, when Rotrud turned 13, Irene sent for her. That's when we encounter one of the few flaws of the Frankish leader. Thing is, the man was really fond of his daughters, and he just didn't want to depart with the dear Rotrud. Irene took this as a grave insult and cancelled the wedding, and so the match was off. But, what if we slightly tip the scales? Charlemagne was incredibly pragmatic, after all, and he could see the benefit of an alliance with Byzantium. So what if, in 787, he just sent Rotrud off to be married with the future emperor? I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Manta Sleep, makers of the world's best sleep masks designed to help you sleep deeper so you can power through your day. As someone who spends countless nights writing and creating videos like this, I know how hard it can be to unwind. That's why I was so excited when Manta Sleep sent me their Sound Sleep Mask, which features ultra-thin Bluetooth headphones for optimal side sleep comfort, plus an impressive 20+ hours of battery life. It also completely blocks out light with zero pressure on the eyes, allowing me to fall asleep quickly and wake up feeling refreshed. All of Manta Sleep's masks are fully adjustable and made from premium materials, perfect for anything from a quick power nap to a full night of rest. And it's not just masks. Manta offers a variety of sleep accessories, including luxurious pillowcases, bed sheets, and even white noise machines, all designed to help you fall asleep faster and sleep more soundly. Join Manta Sleep's Pro Nap movement. Support the channel and support your sleep today by clicking the link in the description. Plus, use my exclusive discount code Alternatehistoryhub at the checkout for an extra 10% off your purchase. The moment Irene called off the betrothal in our timeline, things went sideways real quick. Additionally, despite reaching the age of maturity and outgrowing the need for a regency council, Constantine was sidelined by Irene. None of this, or at least most of this, does not happen if Rotrude marries Constantine. In this alternate timeline, the two are affirmed as the royal couple. Irene still pulls the strings, sure, but there's no expedition to Italy, allowing her to focus on the two other fronts. Charlemagne's course, at least in the short term, is unaffected. He does go on to incorporate Bavaria, while enjoying a destabilized emirate of Cordoba, which just lost its founder. In the east, however, the alterations are immediately apparent. The regency of Constantine is over, and he marries his Western wife, actively promoting the exchange of goods and ideas between the two realms. Instead of being overthrown, Irene's government continues on its course, without major rebellions in Sicily and Anatolia. That being said, the enemies at the gates were not just your regular band of barbarians. To the north, you had the Bulgar Khanate, led by a capable warlord who continued the frequent raids deep into Thrace. And in the east, Irene had to contend with the most successful Abbasid caliph in history, Harun al-Rashid, who had just taken the throne in 786, but he needed time to consolidate his already overextended caliphate. In our timeline, Constantine VI was desperate to prove that he was no longer mommy's little boy, and made numerous terrible decisions which drained the treasury and manpower. He was impulsive, cruel, and hated by nobles and commoners alike. But here, in this alternate timeline, he's given time, and timing is often the most important ingredient for key historical events. 6 years after the marriage between Constantine and Rotrude, the third wife of the Frankish king passed away. Political marriage was just as powerful as a tool as an army, and Charlemagne knew that well. In our timeline, he chose to marry the daughter of a powerful count in Germany in order to secure the volatile Saxon frontier. Just a year prior, the Vikings had made their famous landing in Lindisfarne, starting an age that would fundamentally shake Europe to its core. That same year, Cordoba had sent an army 70,000 strong, destroying everything in its path, reaching as far as Narbonne. But here, the fact that the Frankish-Byzantine relations are thriving. Irene never remarried, and was indeed interested in the match. No countess or duchess could rival what she brought to the table. Both ambitious, both capable, both aching for the restoration of the Roman Empire. And so in 794, the royal match is made, and Irene becomes Queen of the Franks. Keep in mind that Constantine was still the Eastern Roman Emperor, without many of his worst tendencies. Geopolitically, there is no merger or personal union, but trade and culture between the two realms flourishes like never before. Francia and Byzantium exchange ideas, language, military manuals, goods, and the two consolidate southern Italy. Charlemagne and Irene launch massive building projects as they tour their domain, rarely staying in one place, and hold strong against their common enemies. Despite the lack of her presence in Constantinople, the city is still run by the eunuchs loyal to her. Croatia and Venice, which were previous points of contention between the two, are ironed out and solved diplomatically. All of which neatly leads me to one major player, one who I failed to mention so far. No, Jimmy, not Britain, that place is on fire. No, I'm talking about the papacy, and Rome itself. In our timeline, 797 was when Irene was fed up with Constantine's shenanigans and brutally blinded him. His mother then took the throne for herself, but as emperor. Yes, emperor. 2 years later, as he was making his way towards Rome, Pope Leo III was attacked by a band of thugs. Leo was injured and knocked unconscious, and just as they were preparing to take his eyes and tongue, a group of Frankish agents descended upon them, miraculously saving the Pope. Following this incident, the Pope went to Charlemagne, who made sure he was escorted safely back. The following year, Charles the Great was crowned Holy Roman Emperor. You see, Leo considered the throne to be vacant, since Irene was a murderous female, and wanted to secure his position by returning the favor to Charlemagne. But back to our alternate timeline, none of these incredibly coincidental events can even come close to occurring. Sure, the Pope gets attacked and saved, but then what? Constantine VI is a legitimate emperor. Whatever Roman heritage Leo could bestow upon Charlemagne, his marriage to Irene did that 5 times over. So, instead of shifting the trajectory of history with the foundation of the Holy Roman Empire, Pope Leo III is simply imprisoned in 799 due to the vast amount of accusations against him, including perjury and adultery. Instead of adopting the throne/altar duality, the Frankish realm adopts some of the Byzantine customs, as Irene convinces Charlemagne that he should answer to no one. On face value, this isn't a major change out of nowhere, more of a slight diversion of a stream. But in our world, this stream eventually led to the East-West Schism, the Crusades, the investiture controversy, and the Protestant Reformation. Feudalism, catalyzed by the vast Frankish realm and Viking invasions, still occurs, but it is not accompanied by an ever-present papal state, with the ability to meddle in secular matters. There's more. In the next decade, the Frankish realm consolidated, while Constantine struggled to hold the east. Vikings and Avar raids intensified. In 802, the new Khan Krum got busy, and the Bulgars crushed the remnant of the Avar Khaganate. He turned his eyes on the crucial fort of Serdica and lays siege to it. Weeks pass, and as the troops begin to starve, many defect. The garrison surrendered after being promised safe passage, only to be slaughtered. 6,000 defenders were put down, and key officers joined Krum. This attack could not go unanswered. Constantine VI and his advisors, above all a man named Nicephorus, decide to go on a daring expedition in 811. Unlike most nomadic threats, the Bulgars had already taken root. So the emperor laid a procession, leading 30,000 troops towards the capital Pliska. Alongside them, he brought another 40,000 civilians. The goal was to raise Pliska and rebuild it in Byzantine fashion, securing the region and pushing back the frontier to the Danube River. This parade included his magisters, senators, noble families, chief advisors, and Empress Rotrude. As Bulgar scouts reported back the vast size of the Roman army, Krum ordered the evacuation of the city and watched as it burned to the ground. With his victory complete, Constantine marched back to Constantinople, taking a shortcut through the dense Balkan mountains. It was there where Krum laid his trap, awaiting the sluggish baggage train as it slithered through the mountain pass. The road was blocked by a tall, wooden palisade, a deep, spiked trench behind it. over 10,000 Bulgars descended upon the imperial standard in the middle of the night. Highlighted by his large purple tent, the emperor was descended upon and beheaded. Later, Crumb turned his skull into a drinking goblet. The mission, which intended to cut off the head of the snake, resulted in the death of Irene's only son and Charlemagne's favorite daughter. To be clear, the entire expedition happened in our timeline, with the only difference being that it was led by Nicephorus, not Constantine. But considering the circumstances, it is highly probable that this was the way it would have unfolded regardless. With Constantine's death, this means that the throne would pass to Irene's children, but he was Irene and Leo's only child. It had been 17 years since Charlemagne and Irene's wedding day, so the likelihood of them having children is insanely high, but regardless, the title would pass onto Charlemagne. Despite the improved relations between the East and West, Byzantium openly rebels against this decision, with the exception of a few pockets of territory still loyal to Irene, primarily in Greece. One emperor is crowned in Anatolia, another takes Constantinople and Thrace. It's a mess. Struck by grief and fury, Charlemagne and Irene rally a massive army supported by the Venetian navy and land in Dyrrhachium. The splintered and squabbling Byzantines in the west quickly put down their arms and proclaim the couple as co-rulers. Crumb continues to press onwards, using his new engineer to breach the walls of the highly profitable coastal towns on the Black Sea. This sends shockwaves throughout Byzantine high society, and many conspire to replace the pretender in Constantinople, whether by a knife in the back or by opening the gates to the city. By 814, all resistance west of the Bosphorus is quelled. While many protest against a foreigner taking the throne, it is undeniable that he is the only one who could defeat Crumb the Fearsome. Not to mention, the best chance for the Roman Empire to be made whole once more. When he left to deal with the East, Charlemagne entrusted Francia to his sons, Pepin, Charles, Louis, and Pepin. But within just a few years, only Louis was still alive, which leads to a very interesting situation. In 814, Crumb suffered a stroke and died. His son Omertag took over, and he was nothing like his father. Under him, the Bulgars immediately signed a 30-year truce and focused on building projects instead of raiding. In the same year, the mighty Charlemagne succumbed to pneumonia. As for Irene, she would be 60 in this timeline, rather than dying in her exile a decade earlier. So, regardless if they had children or not, the entirety of Francia and Byzantium would become the rightful claim of Charlemagne's only son, Louis I. Even with the Abbasids and Bulgars pacified, actually consolidating this now united realm would be an impossible task. To truly unite Rome, Louis would have to fill in his father's giant shoes. And for me to cover those events, this video has to win a sequel poll. But as always, this is Cody of Alternate History Hub. Thank you to all the patrons who contribute to the channel and keep these videos going. Special thanks to Butcher Pete, Joseph G., Peter Peral, Romulus Fane, Tommy, and Whizzle Mountain. All of you contribute so much, and we couldn't do it without you.